By the way, I've used those models a ton and greatly appreciated.
Cool. Well, I haven't been doing it as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, even the older ones are still very useful. The ones like from back in 2015.
Yeah, I've been mostly focused on other things, but I'm going to try to do as much stock picking as I can. And the nice thing about models isn't that you always get the best stock pick. It's that you can build a knowledge base about an industry that's really big. And by doing the exercise, you might stumble upon a big, great stock like Intellia, but more importantly, you might learn an industry really well, like semiconductors or like biotech. And when you go for an interview or an investor, believe it or not, or whatever the case is, you end up, you end up showcasing your knowledge, and you can often get an investor to invest millions with you if you sound like you know what you're doing. And what better way to do that than really knowing your industry? You might get a partnership with a pharma company or something like that. Like, there's so many reasons why you need to know your industry. You should study all the companies in your industry, and what better place to study them than the SEC filings and press releases and put all your notes into a model. It just makes so much sense. So I don't know of any better method. And even to this day, Warren Buffett still spends most of his time reading 10Ks and 10Qs. So, if it's good enough for Buffett, it's definitely good enough for us. I think the difficulty is
Isn't that how you became an expert in pharmaceuticals? Was you just focused on the pharma?
Yeah. The one trick, though, is even if you spend all your time reading the pharma stuff, there is still a little bit of knowledge that you're not going to get. It's like a 5 to 10% gap that you won't get unless you actually go to industry. And industry gives you a lot of other experience. So if you're a professional investor, I still encourage a couple of years in the industry where you actually get your hands wet in pharma or semis or software or whatever space you want to be, because you really get to see a little bit, one, of the knowledge gap that you don't see. For example, I spent 10 years doing pharmaceutical investing at the highest level of hedge funds, and the one thing I never learned was manufacturing. And it's a huge part of pharma. Huge.
Right.
But it just gets abstracted away from the investors, the public market investors, because they don't really ever get to experience, okay, well, how do you really do this stuff and do things like stability and different manufacturing, important pieces of manufacturing, which are very complicated. You just never learn about it in investing. So there's things like that you'll never quite pick up. And in software, it's probably even bigger, quite frankly.
Right.
I was a software analyst as well, and software analysts don't really see how the sausage is made. Pharma, you get really close-up experience with it, but in software, most of the software companies that are public already have a lot of revenue, so you're basically just watching the revenue go up, and you're just asking the CEO or CFO every quarter, is revenue going up? When revenue go up? That's basically what you can translate the conversation of the average hedge fund or mutual fund with software CEO or CFO. When revenue up? That's 3 words.
And that's something that differentiated you between other, CEOs, was that you're very hands-on, like with Godal, and then with your pharmaceutical companies, you've been very hands-on, whereas most other CEOs tend to not be as experienced in that or versed in that field.
Yeah, that's true. I do think that every CEO should be able to do the job of most of their employees. Clearly, that's not the way kind of the world works, or the way most people do it. In software, there's a huge difference from pharma, where in pharma that's almost never the case. But in software, the most successful software companies in the world were started by programmers, and sometimes they're started for their own benefit. But Microsoft had two very talented programmers as founders. Google, of course, had 2 very talented computer scientists, et cetera, et cetera. You don't see that much in pharma. Art Levinson wasn't the founder of Genentech, but he was credited for transforming Genentech, and he's a bench scientist. Regeneron is another company that did that really well, but most of the big pharma CEOs are quote-unquote professional managers, which, there is a skill of management. It's a real thing, but, good management is quote-unquote, are people that make things efficient, make sure things are running compliantly and on schedule and things like that. And really, it's an important role, don't get me wrong, it's very important, but it's also, relative to pure talent, is one is a lot easier to get than the other. And it's very inspiring to employees, even if you have a jerk of a CEO who's maybe not a good quote-unquote manager that inspires people and makes them feel really great. Sometimes the genius jerk phenotype or archetype can be a successful CEO, and Steve Jobs comes to mind there, as does Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. Those guys were not friendly. Of course they could be, but most of the time they're just irate and pissed off about something and wandering around the company being a jerk. Elon Musk as well. But sometimes those people are still very inspiring because they're really, really good at what they do, and that inspires the colleagues to say, wow, I can't believe I'm working with such a smart group. This person is so demanding. It's not like any other job I've been at. That's what most people say it's like working with me. I've never worked at a company like this because it's just so damn hard to make Martin happy because he expects so much. And at other companies, I'd be a star employee, but right now I'm worried about getting fired because my competitors in this company are so good. So anyway.
Yeah.
You gotta do it intelligently. I mean, you can't be too much of a jerk. You can't be too much of a nice guy. There's plenty of people who are just do that amorphous, very hard to pin down, like, why is this person a good CEO? Why is this person a good leader? You ask yourself, like, it seems like such a soft skill, but it can be really, really important. I mean, inspiring your people to put in their best in a job where at the end of the day, like, for a lot of people, the work-life balance, especially at a bigger company, it's really skewed towards life, not work. If you work at Microsoft or you work at Salesforce.com or Amazon, these are the kind of jobs you take when your work-life balance is mostly in the work column. I'm sorry, mostly in the life column. And you work at a startup if you want it to be mostly in the work column because you can make a lot more money. But you can get more guaranteed money at a place like Microsoft or Google or Amazon. And some of those places you can get the best of both worlds, of course. But at an Intuit or a mid-sized sort of company, an Uber or something like that, they'll pay you well, your job's not going anywhere, and you don't really care that much about the company at the end of the day. It's not your lifeblood. You can always go find another job. So a talented CEO finds a way to get all of those people, which are the bulk of the company's employees, finds a way to get those people excited about their job, finds a way to get those people pumped and just a little more productive. And if you can get those people 10, 20% more productive, you're a great CEO. And your job isn't to be personally good at anything other than that. Your job isn't to program, your job isn't to do sales calls, your job isn't to, make a new drug. That's not your job, that's somebody else's job in the company. Your job when you have thousands of employees is to make them functional, make them work really well, and be a good spokesperson for the company. And that's why
keep the machine running.
Yeah, and hire, make it a good place that people want to come work and want to, come work with you and things like that. And, when you get to that high level, management is just such a very different job. That's why a lot of founders aren't very good at managing larger teams. Anyway.